All right, so welcome everybody, and welcome Elisa. Thank you so much for
you.
being here. We actually got to have a great conversation in Miami, and I really wanted to kind of bring that conversation to the forefront for the listeners here today, because I thought just the insight from that conversation was something that should be shared.
Oh, cool.
So I think starting out, it'd be great for listeners to understand a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your background, and how that life kind of gravitated you
Somehow
towards
ended
bringing
me
you to
up here.
Maman. Just kind of speak to your upbringing and how
Yeah.
you conceived this project.
For sure. So, started off, I grew up in Toronto, between Toronto and Montreal. So, Canadian girl, attached to my mother at her hip and my grandmother in the kitchen. They were huge culinary influences for myself. My father was an entrepreneur and an antique dealer. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, and she was actually a personal chef for many neighborhood families. So most of my memories were, at the dining room table, in the kitchen, baking, licking the beaters, or like hosting some sort of event for a local family with my parents. So the love of food was instilled upon me at a very young age, and the drive of entrepreneurship was also instilled upon me at a very young age. I had quite an impressive eBay business back when I look at it at the age of 12. I found like a little secret loophole with Spice Girl memorabilia that growing up in Canada, them obviously being from the UK, that the dolls, all of the merch that came out was sent to Canada before it was sent to the US for some reason. And I came across that. I bought some dolls, and I think I, was getting 10 times the value of them, selling them to US fans. Everything from like lollipops to rings to anything. So I was pulling in at 12, I was pulling in probably $1,000 a month, which is pretty good for a 12-year-old having, and this was when eBay first started, my father, of course, overseeing all of it. But that was, I think, really what got the bug in me. And then, of course, had the typical, lemonade stands and ice cream stands and every little girl's dream. Until I got to the point of my 20s where I was in a situation where I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I was very creative. I, knew I loved the F&B space. I wanted to be a Spice Girl. I wanted to be a fashion designer. I wanted to be, all of that. And I ended up studying fashion design, fashion business, figured out very quickly working in the industry that wasn't for me. Found myself graduated out of school, wanting to do many different things and, not knowing what I wanted to do. So I wore many hats, and I ended up with a 9-to-5 job in fashion PR, but I loved interior design, so I did that on the side. I still loved baking, so I started a catering cupcake company on the side. I started planning some weddings and events for friends of mine, and then that somehow turned into a job with a wedding planner, and I was spending my evenings and weekends doing that, and it kind of came to a moment where I looked at everything I was doing. I was probably like the busiest 20-something-year-old trying to, juggle a social life too, which I had no time for, and I had like 6 different jobs. And thinking I just couldn't find that one thing that kind of checked all the boxes, and it didn't exist. And so I kind of came to that realization that I had to invent it. So I wanted to kind of create this world for myself where I could really fulfill all of my passions. I was able to, have fun at interiors, marketing, PR, events, and then food being the soul of it. So I was very fortunate at the time to meet my husband, who was then a lawyer. And, on our second date, we shared our dreams and our future goals with each other. And I told him, my concept of Maman. I wanted to kind of create this space where I could do a little bit of everything. And it was a cafe, but it was an event space. But it was really pretty, and we sold a bunch of merchandise and basically everything that it's come to be today. And, he had a background in the hospitality industry. He was sick of law, a very, creative, intelligent guy, and said, it's my dream to open up a restaurant one day. And so here we are, us together like 13 years later, and 10 years later in business, celebrating our 10-year anniversary, 40 locations. So there's the quick version of how we got here.
And what a milestone to reach the 10 locations. Now, in the early days, conceiving the concept, was that the plan to have 40 or more locations? What was the inception of this project? Was it more meant to be just something that could, be that lifestyle
So
for you?
selfish. It was the most like I just wanted to kind of create this little world. It was a side passion project. We were fortunate to be in New York with another job for my husband at the time, and it was that every girl's Instagram meme to open up a coffee shop that's a flower shop that's really pretty. And I was very fortunate. I was able to do it and have it come to fruition. But it was really just, I had the intention of it being one. Never had the intention of it growing into something more. And very quickly we were very fortunate to be really well received from customers. And I think at the time, this was back in 2014, everything was very cold. Everything was very industrial chic. And being in New York City and living there, wanting to find a space to gather, wanting to find a space to work, to celebrate a baby shower, a bridal shower. I think it's a city that is not home to so many, and I think that's something that people were craving. So when coming up with a concept and even coming up with the name, we knew for us, home and creating a home away from home and a warm and welcoming environment was kind of the sole purpose of this. And we were in a space where in a place and time that people in New York don't have dining room tables to entertain 6 friends, let alone kitchens in some of their apartments. So we really wanted to kind of create that place where people could come together around the table, gather. How I grew up in the suburbs, how we did, my husband in France, and in creating that, it was really just kind of like a one-off passion project. It started with the vintage dishes that were passed down from his grandmother to us, all of her blue and white plates. The high chair was my father's high chair, the big long communal table, and all the mismatched vintage chairs were modeled after a table that we had in our dining room home growing up. So it was a real passion project and labor of love, and never in a million years would I have imagined it to be what it is today.
When was that aha moment for you? When you realized, wow, we have something successful, it's time to grow it?
That came very early, and it started probably about 2-3 weeks in, and it was because of press, actually. And I think the first one was we had the editor of Vanity Fair magazine, who lived in the building across the street, came in and said, "What is this space? Who are you?" And I love it, and I love the vibe, and it's something, at the time, the Instagrammable decor and the florals were very refreshing for New York and not seen before. And they fell in love with it and talked to us and said they wanted to do an interview. And next thing you know, 3 months later, we have a 3-page spread in Vanity Fair on us. And then, a week later, we have the editor from Grub Street, New York Magazine, come in and tried our cookie and said, "Oh my God, this is the best cookie I ever had." And next thing you know, there's a lineup down the block of people coming in for our cookies because they did an article and a piece on Maman having the best new cookie in New York City. So it was, I think New York can be a very tough city to start a business in, but it's also the land of opportunities, and you do not know who can be there and who can be knocking on the door, and the customer across the street could be someone who could change your life. And we were very fortunate to have a lot of those people come in to really kind of help shape the business. And I remember we was about the second or third weekend after this article came out, we were supposed to close because I was supposed to go to my friend's wedding back in Toronto, and our publicist at the time, I hired a little PR. She's like, "You can't close." She's like, "If you close, you're done. You cannot do this." And that friend still to this day does not speak to me because I missed their wedding. But we still we lost, and that's the entrepreneurship. Not everyone's going to understand what you do and how difficult it is, as I'm sure you can all relate. But that was kind of the moment for us. So it's like, hey, we're onto something. We need to, really put emphasis and focus on this.
In our last discussion, you spoke about building a lifestyle brand, right? You have the infant line that's come out. You're working on different projects with the table toppers. just wanted to kind of introduce that to the people in the room, understanding that Maman is not just the cafe. It is much more than that, and it has a lot of legs for growth for a brighter future. Would love to hear a little bit about, when the lifestyle brand idea came to be and where it's going.
For sure. It was always there right from the beginning. And I think in building the brand, I knew it was going to be a cafe and a restaurant, and that was the core part of the brand. But to me, I never wanted it to be it. I never wanted that to just be one thing, because I know I'm a creative person. I know that there's, more wings to me. I know I get very bored very easily, and I'll want to switch things up. So in building it, I consciously built a brand that I knew could have wings, and I knew could do something more. And a lot of my efforts today, I'd say, a huge majority of what we do is our brick and mortar business. But even as I look at growth, and those people, ask me the typical question, like, where do you want to be in 5 years? It's like, I want to see this being more. And I have no idea what it is. I'm toying around with stuff right now, trying to figure out what our customer wants, because I feel like there's just so much more to it. I think people have really bought into the aesthetic, bought into the brand, bought into the lifestyle. And we have a cookbook now coming out with a tabletop collection. I have baby line. We have bracelets, we have candles, we have tons of really fun swag. So I'm just kind of at that fun creative moment, trying to figure out what's next and what direction I want to take this. I have dreams of a Maison Maman, bed and breakfast to open up one day, playing with CPG products and going into baking mixes. So I don't know what's next for the brand, but I'm at the really fun stage and a lot of collaborations and testing stuff out to figure out what does my customer want? That's more than what we offer on a day-to-day basis.
I know that pre-COVID, you had, 6 locations?
6, yeah.
And after COVID, and to today, in the last 4 years, you've grown to 40. That is a drastic improvement, accelerated growth at its finest. Now, in that timeline of opening 34 locations in a 4-year period, what lessons have you learned that can kind of keep that ball moving forward, reaching that goal, and kind of, where do you put your focus and making sure that you're keeping along with your vision?
Yeah, I think in speaking to our quick growth, to give you some context, during COVID, we were able to raise money with a private equity firm. And during that time, my husband was very opportunistic. He handles a lot of the finance, the real estate, the operation, all the boring stuff he looks after, and all the important stuff probably. And he saw so much opportunity, and so we were very fortunate. We were able to raise money, and there were restaurants dropping like flies. So many places closed down. We had opportunities presented to us with literally food in the fridge and fully functional, amazingly built out restaurants. Landlords were desperate. They didn't know what was happening. There were so many good deals to be had, and all of a sudden we have money in the bank. We have to grow. The world is crumbling. Restaurants are crumbling, but it's there's light at the end of the tunnel. So we ended up signing 14 leases during COVID, and we also ended up hiring a big team. And I think that for us, in having that inject of money, and really also allowing us to look in the mirror to kind of see where do we need help? How are we going to do this? Let's figure this out. And I think it was a realization factor of both Ben and myself as entrepreneurs, when you wear all of the hats, to think, what are we really good at? Where is our actual added value to the business? And where can we have help? Where can we have help? And where are people better at us? And what do we enjoy doing? Because we also had a baby at the time. And, if something takes away attention from us being parents, it's either got to bring in some income or it's got to be something we really enjoy doing. So it was kind of that moment of figuring out, how are we going to shape our job descriptions and our job roles, and where do we need help and where can we hire it? And that, I think, was our key to growth, is is in hiring good people and in hiring people who saw the vision, people who were excited to grow with us, and people who really complimented us in the way of filling in those gaps for either what we're not very good at or what we don't enjoy doing. And so the combination of that together, I don't even know if I'm answering your question. I'm just
You're doing your thing, girl.
now.
Keep going. You got this.
Like, wait, what was this question again? Coming together is really, I think, what really helped to kind of spearhead our growth, and I think was our key focus as we went from 6 to 34 stores, because you can't do it alone, and we realized we couldn't do it alone. So it was just building a fantastic team around you.
And as you built out your team, are there any roles or certain responsibilities that you felt were that catalyst for, really giving you that confidence to go towards that 40 number?
Yeah. It would have been our COO. So heading up the operations, because anyone, all too well, in the restaurant industry, the operations is probably the most tiring, troublesome, the biggest headache. So for us, we have a fantastic COO who we hired, and that was actually the pivotal point that allowed us to move from New York and leave our 23 babies there and come down with our family to Miami to grow the business here. And I think if it weren't for him, we wouldn't have been able to do that. We wouldn't have been able to grow and be where we are today and be able to leave, a city to develop the business in a new city. So having that key operations person and HR as well. I think as the company grew, we have 1,000-something employees, and when they all have your cell phone number and I'm going to be 5 minutes late and I'm coming in sick, it's like creating those layers have been the most important for us. And as mentioned before, the key people for us to help us grow were filling those gaps of what the two of us were not good at and what the two of us did not want to do anymore. So they were kind of filling those holes for us, allowing us to thrive and be better and grow personally and professionally as well.
I love that. There's a concept that we spoke about in our last discussion that has actually lived in my head rent-free. And that and that is blending versus balance. So many operators, so many business owners are always chasing the balance of being able to have access to their business life, not blend it with their personal life. And, I think a lot of people in this society really focus on balance. Mm-hmm. And you said to me, my focus isn't on balance, it's about blending. Being a mother of 2 and being a mother of 40 restaurants.
Literally.
Talk to us about how you managed that mantra or that concept of blending your lifestyle with your business.
Mm-hmm. And that's, I'm happy you said that example, because it's something I'm so passionate about, and it's kind of been a nice little key to my personal success on being a mom, and and also working with your husband as well. And I think at the beginning, it was all about balance and I have to devote time to my kids and my husband and my business, and there was just not enough hours in the day until it came to a realization, and I heard this advice from someone else and it resonated with me, and it was just something that I really hone in on and I focus on. And ironically, in this conversation, I was literally sitting with one child on my lap talking to him and another one on the corner probably watching YouTube on my phone because my nanny called out, and that's life. And so it's bring your kid to work day. Unfortunately,
we had fun.
We had so much fun. I'm Uncle Kye was there to help play with the kids. But that's the thing is, I think, finding the merge between the two. And I cannot turn off my children. Sometimes I wish to God I could, but I can't turn them off. And they are there 24 hours a day. Unfortunately, business is also very hard to turn off. I could choose to turn it off sometimes, but majority of the time, especially because my husband works with me as well, our pillow talk is literally, about the emails that we got today or stuff that's going on at work. And so for me, it's been a realization of how do I just make the two coexist together? You know, can I have business meetings while I have, you know, a baby feeding sitting on my lap and one is, you know, watching the phone? Sure. If I have to take a meeting and I have to turn off the Zoom camera because I need to feed one of my kids, great. You know, if, you know, it's bring your kid to work today because your nanny called out sick, fine. And it's just accepting that it's okay. I think working with other, you know, specifically female entrepreneurs, and dad entrepreneurs as well, who have the same kind of struggles, and I feel like it's become a more accepted norm, especially after COVID, of having both of them coexist with one another. And sometimes you have important business meetings, and you know, my kid's gonna watch the iPad for an hour and he'll be fine, and so be it. But I think it's just really, you know, finding a life where everything can coexist instead of putting so much emphasis on turning one off and turning the other off, and instead of finding balance, because it just doesn't seem to exist in my life.
I think balance is definitely something that is hard for many of us to find, especially being entrepreneurs, being married to the game, as some may say. But speaking about, we've spoken a lot about Maman as a brand, but I really wanted to, as a restaurant consultant, really wanted to kind of dive into the restaurant meat, right? And, you know, we have a very highly male-dominated industry, where most people in this space are gonna have an old school mentality, and especially, I'm sure, in the New York markets. Maybe you could speak a little bit about being a co-founder of a large national brand, and you know what that has done for you, what challenges you've faced, what highlights there have been in your life navigating those waters.
For sure. So I think there's definitely like gender equality that exists still to this day, and I feel like, you know, not being a founder and being a co-founder and working alongside my husband has been an interesting eye-opening experience, and seeing how, you know, people are speaking to him, seeing how people are treating him versus myself. You know, especially I find when it goes to the PE and raising money, and, you know, all dealing with all of the men in suits and trying to gain respect and trying to gain, you know, a voice in the boardroom for a lot of them. I think there are some places where I don't have the knowledge and I don't have the experience, and, you know, math and numbers are not my thing. And I think owning that and knowing it and being confident about it and saying, you take the wheel on this, is great. And I think him also, on the flip side, you know, will do the exact same thing for me. So it's definitely there. I think it definitely has its roles. I think, you know, confidence comes from within, and I know when to take a back seat, and I am not comfortable speaking of a subject, or I'm not confident talking about our profit and loss statement for the past, you know, 6 months in a boardroom of, you know, 20 men who live and breathe this every single day. So I think I definitely, you know, own, and I know what I'm good at, and I put my emphasis there, as opposed to trying to be something I'm not and trying to feel diminished in a room where I don't have the confidence to speak to that. But on the flip side, I know it exists. I know it's really tough for a lot of women out there to be in these situations, and to gain value and to gain a voice and to gain respect in such a male-dominated industry.
And what advice do you have for the young women entrepreneurs, regardless of industry, those who are coming into mostly male-dominated spaces? Is there any advice that you have that you can impart some wisdom?
Yeah, I think it's as I just mentioned, it's owning what you're good at and really knowing your strengths. And I think it's also knowing your weaknesses. I think as entrepreneurs, it's very easy for us all to say, oh, I'm good at this, I'm good at this. Really identifying things that you're very good at, but like, what are you bad at? Like, and I think that that's the first thing we should be addressing, and the first thing we should be looking at, because like, where do I need help? Where can I not stand up in a crowded room and talk to people? Because I need to hire someone to take that spot. Or where, you know, what am I not super, confident. And also, like, what do I not love doing? Because at the end of the day, you're devoting your entire life to, entrepreneurship. And if it's something that doesn't bring you joy, or as I mentioned, something that's going to take time away from my children, I really better, find fulfillment in it and really enjoy it. So, oftentimes my favorite piece of advice is knowing your weaknesses, because that's how you're going to grow, that's how you're going to succeed, that's how your business is going to succeed, because you can't do it all yourself. It's impossible to do everything yourself, and strengths come to us easy, but our faults do not come to us easy. So it's really that self-identification of looking in a mirror and saying, like, where can I use help, and hiring that person, finding a co-founder who has all of those qualities and all of those strengths.
So this is a question that you've gotten many times, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
5 years? Where do I see myself?
Oh, well, I was gonna say 10 years.
Oh, well, okay.
No, but the question is, where do you see the company in the next 5 to 10 years? And and what key decisions?
Is it really? That's really
No,
your question? Oh my
straight
god.
up.
Oh my god, that's the ending question.
Where do you see the company in the next 5 to 10 years, and what key decisions do you feel will get you there?
Fate. If you asked me a year ago, and I laugh at this question because I feel like it's always the same question, and every time I've answered this over the past 10 years, I have been wrong. So I am like, I'm refused to answer it, putting my foot down. I'm like, if you were to ask me 6 months ago if I would be living in Miami with 6 locations, I'd say absolutely not, no way. But I think being opportunistic and honestly not giving yourself I think having goals as pivotal points to look forward to are fantastic. I could say 100 Maman locations, but to go into the details, I'm like, nothing has ever worked out the way I planned. In the past 10 years in business, it was supposed to be one shop, and now here I am 10 years later with 40 shops in a city I never thought I'd be living in. So I am not a planner. I am very opportunistic, and I'm very optimistic. I kind of like to go where the wind takes me. I think, maybe tomorrow a big fund will come and knock on the door and say, hey, we love your company, we would love to buy it. So, or we might, continue driving this crazy horse to like 5 other cities around the US. So all to say, it's a question that is like so difficult to answer, because life changes. If COVID happens again, which hopefully it doesn't, none of us ever expected that. So I see myself happy and healthy with beautiful children and a thriving business, whether I still be owning it or someone else be taking it over. But yeah, I think that's my long sought out answer. I don't see myself anywhere in 5 to 10 years.
And I think that's just fine.
It will go where the wind takes me. Yeah.
No, well, I do want to thank you for coming and taking the time to share with all of us your experiences, challenges, the insights that you have in the, experience of owning a very large brand. But we all appreciate, I'll speak for everyone here and say, I think we all appreciate, your time and your insight, and thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for all the advice that you gave me as well the other day.
Absolutely.
For sure. It was great. 3 biggest mistakes. First one, thinking you can do everything yourself, which took me a very long time to hit rock bottom and burnout until I had to have that moment of of clarity. And it's okay to ask for help. Not everyone is going to do things the same way that you would. It might not be as good. It might be better, but to take a chance on other people. So I think that was one of my biggest mistakes. Mistakes. Oh my God, there's so many of them. I make them every single day. I think hiring for skill set. That's been the biggest challenge. And I think now, we had a lot of hires because they looked great on paper and they had fantastic resumes and they had tons of experience. And I'm not talking about back office hires. I'm talking about more, waiter, server, front of house hires. And for me, when we go into interviews, when I go into interviews now, if you have personality and if you smile, you have the job. I can teach you how to make coffee. I can teach you how to put a croissant and a coffee in a bag and how to make a salad. I cannot teach you to smile. I cannot teach you personality. I cannot teach you to be a warm and welcoming person. I can't teach you to leave your baggage of your boyfriend drama behind you and not bring it to work. So I felt like I hired very often at the beginning based on like, oh, you worked at this place for 4 years and this place, and then you stand there and you're like a dead robot. And the other big mistakes, oh gosh, I think so many of them. Like if you go to our first location, the whole thing is just a mistake. The layout. Like when anyone goes to our Soho location, I'm like the layout, the flow, the everything, the ceiling we chose, the flooring we chose. I'm like the vintage chairs that break on a constant basis, the like vintage china flatware. That's actually one thing fun is treating it like it was my home. So I think when I first opened our Soho location, as mentioned, everything had sentimental value to me. This was literally my dining room, and I was inviting like customers who were strangers into my home to come around the table. My dishes were my grandfather's. The table, I hand sanded and painted all of the pieces. I found, beautiful artifacts that I collected from like vintage markets over the years. I'm like, everything got broken, everything got stolen, everything got destroyed, and like there were so many tears shed, and it was, treating it like, it was just a very different industry. It's not, so it's that fine balance now of creating that home-like environment, but also has to be like super functional. Yeah. That stems from my wedding planning background and my neurotic attention to detail that my staff hate me for. And it started actually in one location, so to speak, our espresso machine, our grinder, our coffee decanters are all branded and wrapped in our Maman brand pattern. So I had 4 patterns designed when we first started the company, all of which have a story behind them. And these patterns were all within our coffee cups. And it actually, funny, the first one started, it was an exposed espresso machine. It was our Hudson Street location in New York. And we bought it secondhand, and it was black. And I was just like, I don't want a huge black coffee machine here. And we actually just got a van at the time, and we had the person who wrapped our van in our Maman print. I'm like, can you do other things? Can you do metal? He's like, yeah, I can wrap any surface. And so we gave him this coffee machine, and he wrapped it in the toile. And so now, since then, it's become a staple. But it was really just like hide a cheap eyesore espresso machine at the time. I'm like, but now it's become a staple. And now, like, anything I get, I'm like, make this pretty, wrap this, wrap this. So it's fun, like any actual like metal surface you can transform. So thank you for noticing now, because now they're actually all concealed and behind the counter. So it's really only like something that the staff gets to see and appreciate. That's the hardest challenge, and that's like what I ask myself, and my role in the business every single day is so much about the brand experience. And for me, as we chatted earlier, as like so many other restaurant businesses, whether it be in New York and DC, here, good food and good coffee is easy to find these days. I could tell you, 5 places within a 5-minute walk of our West Palm that has awesome food and awesome coffee. And I think, customers are more educated now, especially in places like Miami, especially in places like New York, will sought out for these good food moments, and there's a lot of them. So why is someone coming to us? So for me, it's the multi-sensory experience. It has to be more than just good food and good coffee, because you can get that so many places. So I put a lot of emphasis on creating that experience. So whether it be, the customer service, the girl who's like super smiley and bubbly, who greets you when she comes in, the music that we play, the ambiance, the purposely mismatched, vintage plates that will create an Instagrammable moment for you, the banyan trees that we have throughout the space. So it's really, putting effort into those details, and not only from a customer standpoint, from a staff standpoint as well. And I think it's also super hard to retain staff in the F&B industry. So kind of also on the flip side, how do I attract customers, but how do I also attract employees to work in the space? And same thing, it's creating that environment, it's creating that culture, it's company culture, and it's customer experience. So my efforts go into those two roles, and really making sure that, yes, we have great food and we have great coffee, but customers are spoiled these days and they need more. So what more can we have? And I feel like that's been really, a bit of our key and our attribute to our success. So for us, concept started New York, and for us, we're very fortunate, having started in New York, that you can have multiple locations within a 5-block radius. There's maybe within a 10-minute walk down in like Soho, Tribeca area, I have 4. But they're all different neighborhoods, different demographics. And for us, as we grew and as we saw that, we quickly, after our 6th location, came up with a commissary model. So it's really that hub and spoke model. So we do that model for a few different reasons. Firstly, for cost standpoint. So basically, for those of you who don't know, commissary is like we build out one big, amazing dream kitchen. We invest in a great pastry chef. We invest in all of the equipment, which is very expensive. The sheeters to do all the croissants, the ovens, and the talent as well. So if you're making 36 cookies or you're making 200 cookies, it's the same effort that goes into the scooping and the dumping. So for us, having that commissary model also allows us, firstly, freshness within each location. So what we've done is we do all of our doughs there. We send them out to the locations, and they just bake them on site. So for example, our cookie dough, our commissary here is in Wynwood, and every 2 days we have a truck that drives here and brings our croissants that are frozen, brings our doughs, the cookie dough balls ready to go, etc. And we do all the finishing on site. So that also creates consistency. So if you guys have a cookie here or you have a cookie in Design District, it's going to taste the exact same as well. So that's also been important for us. So when we grow and when we looked at different markets, New York was an easy, obvious one because you can open multiple locations. And our second market was, what cities can be conducive to that formula where I can centralize everything and have a driver being able to deliver everything within a, let's say, 2-hour radius. So Miami naturally, I think, had such a great synergy with New York. I think for here, the competition was minimal compared to New York, where, every block there's someone doing the same thing that we're doing. And it was a large enough city that we could open multiple locations. There could be one in West Palm, one in Boca, one, where we can facilitate the same model of our commissary kitchen. So in scouting out new cities to develop in, our next one we're looking at is actually Dallas. Because I think the demographic is there, and there's also that natural ability to open maybe 10 locations off of one kitchen in multiple different markets within a 2-hour vicinity. Then Petit Maman, which is what you mentioned, we have one right now here in Miami in Design District, and that concept came, ultimately it was a 2nd generation location that closed down but didn't have a full kitchen, so we couldn't do our full menu. It was very small, so for us, we wanted to kind of create a grab and go. I think a perfect example of that is our Monahan Station location, where it's really more or less a kiosk. So we can't bake cookies, we can't be making the doughs. And from a growth standpoint, it's great because we can take on smaller pieces of real estate, which is much cheaper for us. we can take on places with no kitchens and be able to produce high volumes and high quantities out of them. We can really kind of have a more flexible model. So the Petit Maman location is really just more grab and go items. We don't have the full sit down. But then it's fun for us because we can do pop-ups, we can do train stations, because everything is supported elsewhere. And oftentimes we find a lot of second generation locations, which is the best for us, very minimal investment when they have all of the equipment already there. And those we convert into the Petit Mamans if they don't have full kitchens. Yeah, most definitely. And I think this business has been so much relationship building, and I think it's really all who you know. To be honest, when I started out, it was very organic. It was very natural. I, didn't have a place like 1909 with, like-minded people and all of these amazing resources. It was really just like meeting people along the way. I think past experiences, past employers as well. To this day, my first employer, I just got a catering order from them the other day, which is so nice to kind of keep those relationships alive. And as you go, just, not burning any bridges. One of the most beneficial groups for, after I had my son is really when I started to look to it a little bit more. And a lot of the mom groups have been so supportive. I think not only from a general mom standpoint, but even from a business standpoint, and kind of, making that adjustment, because I think that was the hardest, most pivotal point where I was like, okay, I need help. I can't do this. So really, kind of, whether it be, I need a babysitter tonight, I have a meeting that ran late, can someone help me and look after my children, to support my launch of my new baby collection and have like the 20 girls in that group show up, who, can relate, who are all mom, who are all entrepreneurs, who really have that like network with one another. So I think finding, those who are like-minded, but I wish I had, a space like this who could have helped at the beginning. And I think even today, still, forget the beginning, I still, I'm still learning things every day, and I still need a lot of help, and I still don't know what I'm doing half of the time. So I think no one's ever, really succeeded, and there's always room for growth and always areas for help. But I think it's just so much about your network and making connections and building relationships with people. Good question. So that was the scariest point, and that was right prior to COVID. We had 6 locations, and we actually just at the time got on Oprah's favorite things list for our cookies, and that was a huge pivotal moment in our business, because it was like nationwide recognition. It was opening up an e-commerce business that we never even knew could have existed. And we kind of were at the point where it's like, what are we doing? Are we just going to be comfortable here? Are we going to stay where we are? Can we develop this on our own? We did, bootstrapping. We had friends and family for the first, 6 locations, can we take this to the next level? And Trispan, who's our PE fund, who we brought on, during the whole process, I was very scared. My husband was the only one who, we bounced ideas off, the only one who I had to have approve things and have a say in things. So it was a great collaborative relationship. And for me to think, oh my God, I'm going to have a stranger now who's going to come in and be part of this and have an opinion on what I do. And early on, I think firstly, we knew we didn't want to give majority. We were fearful in someone, it was our baby ultimately, and someone taking our baby and taking it over. But we knew we needed some help to get to the next level. So in looking for a PE firm, I think, for us, and we're very fortunate, who we landed upon really brought value where value was needed, which, to be honest, was financially, to grow our team, to grow our office, to grow in terms of numbers of locations. They have, a huge skill set in terms of support, in terms of data, but no interest in micromanaging the day-to-day, which was fantastic. And so I think really finding that, finding those investments who can bring value where value is needed and where you want value, and really making that clear in terms of what you're shopping for when it comes to more than money. But they've definitely really helped us grow from 6 stores to 40 and beyond. And I think money and also organization and forcing us to get organized. As we didn't have the P&Ls lined up, and it was definitely, it's like a teacher who's going to be checking your homework now, and so you have to make sure you crossed your T's and dotted your I's, and someone has eyes on you. So that was great to kind of really force us to bring ourselves to the next level and become a little bit more professional in what we were doing.
Thank you for letting me know where you got your tables from, because we emailed you.
Oh, was that you?
And I don't know who got back to us within 15 minutes. I was like, wow.
Was it World Market or Home Depot? Or
Yeah, it was
Home Depot.
where we thought it was going to be some fancy French
It was
place.
probably me. No,
Yeah.
and that's why I'm like, so I, if anyone has any other questions too, I love helping and things like that, and fellow restaurant owners. And I feel like there's such a, I don't know, in New York, actually, compared to Miami, it's so competitive. Everyone's like out to get each other and so cutthroat. And, but I'm like, I wish, I probably sent 10 emails when I was opening up my restaurant being like, where did you get these tiles from? And it's like, you don't hear back from any of them. So I make sure I get those emails. I'm like, I will make sure I reply to every single one of them, because I would hope that, I wish I had that insight. So I hope you got your tables.
You got
I'm
back
like,
to
they're
us
great.
quickly. We're shocked. We're like, wait, what? And we got the tables.
Perfect. They're great tables. Great tables. But that's actually, and that's the funniest thing about scaling too, and the biggest challenge, because we use a lot of vintage pieces, like even my outdoor patio furniture. And that's one thing that I have to get better at, is like finding better sources for our things. So, we have our Sunset Harbor location, and I ordered from Home Depot 20 outdoor tables, and then 2 of them break, and then we decided to extend our patio and add more seating. I'm like, oh, and now that reference is no longer available, and the manufacturer is no longer a business, and I'm like, and I can't find it anywhere. So it's kind of the pains of like starting from vintage and then going to consumer. And now I'm at a point, it's like, okay, I need a manufacturer and a wholesaler who can just help like bang these things out. But I really consciously try to not cookie cutter everything. And I don't want you to go to one location and have it feel like, a Starbucks is like, this is my reference of tiles, and this is my reference of chairs and tables. And, we try and like, I'll do it for 3 for sake of ease on my part. But then you'll see, like if you look in West Palm Beach compared to like Sunset Harbor or South of Fifth, it's like a totally new tile, still on brand, but we still want them to feel cozy and still like your neighborhood coffee shop, and not cookie cutter, and don't have one reference for everything. Maman, it means mother in French.
Okay, got it.
So it's pronounced Maman. You don't pronounce the end. It's not Mammon, which we get often from a lot of Americans. So it means mother in French, and we did it in tribute to our moms, who were both of our biggest inspirations in the kitchen, and also I think it's something that's relatable to so many people, and I think the word mom really kind of like encompasses home, and kind of creates either fantastic memories in the kitchen or horrible memories in the kitchen, but at least they're memories. So for us, it's it was a word that really resonated with us, and I think is relatable to so many others, kind of creating what we want to do. That is a great question, and we actually have gotten approached quite a bit from doing that, and we've always entertained it. And my biggest fear is it's like hiring a nanny full time to look after your child. It's like I am afraid of it losing its soul and its integrity. And as mentioned, a lot of franchisor, it's like, what's your chair reference? What's your table reference? It's we are not cookie cutter enough for better or for worse. That I feel like we're at a point where our business is franchisable. Even from an operations standpoint, there's a lot of work that goes into it and goes behind it. So potentially in a few years, you know, we could be there. We've gotten some cool opportunities from like Japan and Korea and Dubai to franchise there. I feel like there I would be more open to doing it in a market where I have like zero knowledge and zero idea of how to do a business there. But here within the U.S., within the States, I'm fearful for it to lose its soul. And I'm fearful of that every day as we grow, every new store opening that grows. I still put so much emphasis on trying to make it a cozy neighborhood coffee shop and trying to feel like just one. And, you know, if you franchise it, you're in the hands of someone else. So that's my biggest challenge. But something from a business and growth standpoint that's, you know, super admirable for future. Because I can't do very many more.
Thank you, everyone. and
Thank
enjoy
you.
the rest of your
Thank
day.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was awesome.